A little while ago, I came in here in front of the camera and I was like, GameCube, Switch, I don't know, man. By the end of the year, maybe the Switch will be my new favorite console. This is probably your favorite system ever. And I fully expect by the end of this year, it will be. We have to settle this once and for all. I have to figure out whether this is my nostalgic brain going, oh man, the GameCube. Or whether my brain's actually like, no, the GameCube is better for this reason. Get that Switch trash out of here. I'm so sorry, the Switch isn't trash, I love it. So I got brainstorming. I sat down and thought, what's the best way to do this? What is the best way to do this? And I thought, you know what? We're gonna drop them both of a rooftop and we're gonna see which one survives. All right, bad idea, but I have a better one. We're gonna do the Ice Bucket Challenge. Oh my God, how is this happening? All right, my terrible ideas aside, is there actually a fair way to compare the two? And I decided, no, there is no fair way. So I'm just gonna run through the pros and cons of each console and we're gonna make our decision up at the end. You can join me if you'd like. Now, when you put the consoles side by side, there's obviously one big difference, one big thing that you're like, wow, there is a big separation between these two. It hardly even feels like a fair competition. And that's the portability. The fact that one of these consoles is so portable, it's a little bit of an unfair competition. And I mean, this handle does make all the difference. So when I'm actually getting around town, being able to carry the GameCube with this handle, I feel like a 12-year-old businessman, honestly. You rock up to your friends' places, you slam the GameCube down, check what's under the hood, boys. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. It is unfair though. The Switch being so portable, the fact that I can just move it around wherever I need to and play wherever I want, it does have its own kind of uniqueness to it that the GameCube simply doesn't have. So after we spent our time going through the controllers and the games and comparing everything side by side, there's still one big feature that makes the Switch go, well, that's kind of the better console. That's why personally, I'm gonna leave the portability out of this equation. It's gone. I'm not gonna think about it. I'm not gonna compare that side by side because one, the handle's obviously better. The portability is such a big selling factor that I feel like it would just be unfair. Like it's already won the competition by that stage. It'd almost be like throwing the fact that it has the HD display where the GameCube doesn't and that it can have the internet and have friends list and throwing all those other equations in there that just simply weren't around back when the GameCube was around. Yeah, portability. You know what I mean? It feels unfair in the comparison here. So I'm gonna compare the parts that actually can be compared here. I really enjoy the design of both of them. Having a big cube was actually one of my favorite things about the GameCube back in the day. It was such a different console. And the Switch obviously is such a thin, nice design to it. My only problem is that it's not quite up to the hardware where Nintendo has been. I've talked about this before, but in the past, you know, my Switch has this little thing that what is it called? The kickstand. The kickstand doesn't stay in. It just constantly like just flaps around down there and doing what I don't want it to do. And like it gets cracks in it and the Joy-Con issues and things like that. It means that the hardware isn't quite what it used to be. And especially compared to the nice feel of the GameCube. I don't know the last time you popped any of the buttons on a GameCube, but just pushing in these buttons, that is so satisfying. Oh, I'm gonna do it again, excuse me. Just plugging controllers in and turning the buttons on, it's all really satisfying the feedback. And actually that's one strange thing that I don't think we even talk about with the Switch because it doesn't need to be talked about. But one thing that I noticed after touching the GameCube, is that the Switch, the button doesn't give much feedback, the power button on top. It doesn't feel like you're pressing a power button when you turn that on. There's been several times that I'll turn my Switch on and I'm like, did I turn that on? I'll press it again just in case. And then it turns back off as soon as it comes on. That happens way too often actually. That's enough about the boxes anyway, because really we're trying to compare a square to a rectangle. They're never gonna compete side by side on that side. Something that we can kind of compare more side by side is the controllers. Now, I'm not gonna talk about the Wave Bird, I think it was called, because one, I didn't have one, and two, I've assumed it was a Pokemon up until recently. So I'm gonna be talking about the original GameCube controller. Now for me, this is honestly the most comfortable controller. As far as a controller that I could just leave in my hands all day, I could sleep with this bad boy. That sounds wrong. But I never get tired of using this. It just feels so good in the hands. That sounds wrong. Practicality, I mean, it has the analog triggers, so these actually have some sort of compression to them. I can adjust the nozzle of spray that comes out of Mario, or more practically, adjust the speed of a car, which is a really big plus compared to the Switches, which just doesn't have that. The D-pad is not very good, but I mean, there weren't many games that used it on the GameCube. Realistically, when it comes down to the games that you actually played with this, the games that were made for it, it's a beautiful controller. Would it still stand up today to current gen games? Not really, but for what it was back in the day, this is still my favorite thing to hold in my hands. Sorry, Nat. One of the really big benefits that I actually haven't talked about when comparing the GameCube compared to the Switch is the color options. Now, obviously, the color. Now, this is it space gray? I don't know what type of gray this is. It's gray. Silver, platinum, something. Both the GameCube and the controllers came in different colors. I mean, personally, who doesn't love that spice orange? I know I was a big fan of the Spice Girls when I was younger, and that spice orange, maybe it was just the word association, but woo-wee! The Switch obviously comes with a range of different colors too, but only really to the Joy-Cons. When it comes to the system, you might get a couple decals that actually happen on the back, but the system itself is black, black, and black. But at least we get these colourful Joy-Con, which I actually really like the Joy-Con. Surprisingly enough, I don't find them uncomfortable to hold. I like to use these Joy-Con as just a thing I'd use all the time. The Pro Controller is obviously better, and I would use it more often if I have the choice, but I'm never annoyed by having to use this for maybe an hour or two at a time. I don't get uncomfortable, I don't get cramps, but again, it comes down to the hands. Personally, love it. The big edge up that the Switch actually has is the fact that I can do this. I can detach the Joy-Cons, and I have now not only two controllers, so two players can play at once, or I can put them on a thing, grip, it's called a grip, and play it like a normal controller, or I can just play them both separately and just like relax and play with my arms above my head. You know, you can just play whatever way you want, and I love that about these, the flexibility you have. There's so much else that I could compare here if I wanted to. I could go into like the mini disc, SD cards, the memory cards, but there's no point comparing, actually there is a point comparing them, but that's not what I want to get into. I think what we all want to talk about here, and the thing that really makes my mind up about the console is the games. Now they actually have a lot in common, surprisingly enough. Like they both have Mario games, Zelda, Smash, Mario Party, Mario Sports games. They got a lot in common here as far as their library goes. But the GameCube still can have a leg up in some ways. I mean, it has Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door. Wowee, I love that game. Pikmin games, it has Star Fox Adventures, and it has multiple Mario Party. So the library itself actually has a lot going for it. But then we get to the Switch's games, and it still feels so unfair because the Switch has indies, and like indies weren't a thing back then. Look at it now. They're making some of my favorite games. The third parties are way more on board with the Switch than they were with the GameCube. So again, we're missing like this major portion there. And obviously there's so many great Nintendo games that like I could just list off here. I just feel unfair comparing the two. So when I really sit down and think about it, yeah, the Switch is a better console. It has like the hardware, the portability, the Joy-Cons, all the games, the nindies, the third parties, the more memory, the better screen if you want to go that far. It's got so much going for it. But what this comes down to in the end is where your nostalgia lies. Does your nostalgia lie with the games in the GameCube, like Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door? Am I willing to sit here and say, well, until it gets a proper Paper Mario game, the Switch is never going to be my favorite console? And yeah, I kind of feel like that. I feel selfish, but I'm like, yeah, well, the GameCube had some of my favorite games, and I had so much fun with those games that I almost feel like I'm willing to hold the Switch back and say, no, I'm holding onto the GameCube, don't let go. But look, by the end of the year, by the time we get Luigi's Mansion and Mario Maker, and we're gonna get Animal Crossing and Metroid at some point, obviously not by the end of this year. By the time we get all these games, there's no way the Switch isn't going to be my favorite console. Even if I am still holding on to nostalgia like some desperate 30-year-old virgin. I'm not a virgin. Anyway, that's enough of me for one day. Let me know down below whether you were still holding on to the GameCube as nostalgia, or have you moved on to the Switch and are willing to declare that, no, this is my favorite console, Eric. Or maybe you have another console that's your favorite. Let me know down below. And if you made it this far in the video and you enjoyed what happened here, consider hitting that like button, consider hitting that subscribe button, and remember, for great Nintendo entertainment, you can count on me. For today's end screen, I've just finished the ice bucket thing, and that was a horrible idea. I am just drenched, it's freezing, it's not that warm a day. It may look it, but it's not, it's really not. So, yeah, I don't know. No more skits. Lots more skits. Alright, bye everyone.